How will you know if your life is on track? How will you know how to answer these questions? How will you know if you're being honest with yourself or if your responses are merely reflections of what you feel should be said? All of us have learned how to game test, how to figure out a questioner's angle and then respond accordingly. Sometimes that means the answer is a stretcher, sometimes it's an outright lie. Sometimes it's the truth, but it leaves out a heck of a lot of key details. But we've learned how to answer questions, but what about the bigger life questions where rehearsed responses might silence the inquirer, but they fall short of actually reflecting your inner beliefs, wants, and needs? How then do you figure out the correct response? And to take it one step further, how will you know if your life is on track? A couple hundred years ago, an essayist named Ralph Waldo Emerson gave a sermon where he spoke of the importance of self-reliance, challenging each of us to trust ourselves and search for our own truth, as every heartbeat vibrates to that iron string. He argued all of us must find our own singular tune to this iron string if we ever want a chance to master this little thing called life. Truly listening to the string requires an astute set of introspective ears. You hear voices all the time, but you've found a way of ignoring them. Sometimes that's a good thing. The devious voices that tell you to trip the snotty kid at the playground, conveniently ignore a phone call from your father, or potentially even say, kidnap a bushel of naked mole rats, freeze them, and then dress them in Barbie outfits to reenact scenes from Housewives of Atlanta. These, of course, are the voices we beg you to ignore to ensure society doesn't send you to a special, well-cushioned home in the countryside. I'm not talking about these voices. They're rare and only affect the touched ones. I'm talking about the less perverse voices, the ones that second-guess you when you talk to strangers at a party, mock you while you're driving, filter you when you answer back to the boss at the office, tie your tongue when you're on a first date, or wreak havoc when your head hits the pillow. Your goal becomes to quiet these voices, not shut them up, just merely tweak the volume down a bit. These voices we don't want to silence. They give us cues needed to remain in society. To deny them dooms us to ostracism. But the voices you need to heed are the ones that give you hints to your soul string, the ones that come at you when you allow your mind to drift off to self-reflection. Yet our worlds are programmed to keep us from these quiet moments. We suffer from information fatigue syndrome, IFS, an actual diagnosis, where we fill our every waking moment with digital distractions, logging on average 11.9 hours a day, checking our TVs, computers, and mobile devices. If you want to hear where your life is, you have to quiet the world around you. Turn off the digital noise and your mind will hint to your grounding. Ideally, you'd invest in some meditation or regular yoga, but if that ain't happening already, it's not going to start after reading a book. So what's left for you? Oddly enough, your world already. So, what's left for you? Oddly enough, your world already reveals your life track. You just need to know when to listen. When? 2 times. When you're on the move and when you fall asleep. Transportation without digital distraction is the easiest way to flip your consciousness. Whether you drive or train or bus or taxi, if you give your brain just a few minutes relief from screen absorption, you automatically click into autopilot and your mind drifts to the areas of your life that are drifting off course. Everything you need to know about your relationships, your career, your finances, your future are open for internal debate. But when you engage these transportation switches, your mind immediately grabs onto the issue most responsible for you swaying from your string. Instead of silencing these voices, listen to them. But if you refuse to shut down while moving, your mind will still catch up at the end of the day. At night, when your head hits the pillow and you leave this state of consciousness and head toward the dream world, it is in these moments or these minutes or these hours where you learn if your life is on track, if your string is well tuned. You've been given a fairly flawless life barometer, the ability to fall asleep. So how do you sleep? Do you fall right to sleep when you pull up the covers and assume the fetal position, or does your mind instead fill with the whisperings of regret, of fear, of insecurity, of embarrassment? Do you hate yourself, your choices, your relationships? And once asleep, do you sleep through the night, filling your dreams with rainbow bliss and puppy dog contentment? Or is your night filled with punishing nightmares that fill you with fits of tossing and turning? Some of you might have found ways to trick this sleep test by each night taking yourself past exhaustion, or possibly self-medicating with a cocktail or a pill de nuit, or maybe even zoning out to the enchanting sounds of an Oceans and Desert Waves CD you picked up at the checkout counter at Starbucks. So for all you sleep cheaters, you Barry Bonzes of the nocturnal world, your results will be doctored. You're muffling your voices, not truly listening to them. But if you really want to see how you're doing, if you really want to see if your life is on track, crawl into bed at 9 o'clock and see what happens. Do you fall right to sleep? Do you wake up 8 hours later refreshed and giddy for the next day's adventure? If so, your life is well tuned. But if not, your wiring is crossed and your life is somehow astray. And if during the day, when you're on the move, if you find you're more flustered than serene, more anxious than carefree, you'll know your choices have been taking you away from the true you. You must have some questions that need answering. So is your life on track?